The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
Welcome to a special edition of Cable Reports. I'm Woody Evans for the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association. Overseeing some 7 state agencies, 9,700 employees with a combined annual budget of $5 billion, Secretary of Transportation Sean Connaughton also oversees trains, planes, automobiles, our highways, our byways, and even a commercial space authority. As the point man on the governor's transportation funding proposal this session, he has been a very busy person, to say the least. Welcome, sir.
Woody, how are you today?
I'm just fine. We're glad to have you here. I know it's been a very busy session. Can you give us the lay of the land as to where things stand on the governor's transportation proposal?
Sure. I mean, the governor's proposal has passed, essentially, in the main parts of his proposal passed the House of Delegates. And unfortunately, due to other issues, it was not passed by the Senate. However, because the House bill came over to the Senate Subcommittee on Finance actually did act on it. They made some changes to it. It's supposed to go to the Senate floor actually as today, and we are hoping that we'll get to a conference and maybe wrap this up in the next few days.
Well, we were talking earlier about the problems with the gas tax. It was never adjusted for inflation, for example. It's about, 46% of what it used to be back in 1986. And there are other factors which have led the governor and yourself to propose an elimination of it with a raise in the sales tax. So talk to us about those issues.
Yeah, basically, I mean, everyone focuses on the fact that the gas tax hasn't been increased in 26 years. But we have an inflation issue. But we also have a real challenge when you look at what's happening with car mileage and alternative fuel vehicles. We are actually seeing that even though we have more vehicles registered in the state, more vehicle miles driven in the state, our gas tax revenues essentially have been flat. And in fact, last month, January, we had almost a 19% increase in state revenues overall, yet gas tax revenues actually dropped. And in fact, if you look over the last year, sales tax revenues grew by 4.6%, and the gas tax revenue stayed about 0.5% growth, so it's almost flat. We have a state that's growing. We have obviously some real challenges when you look at what's happening with places like Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads, and the more urban areas that need a lot of new infrastructure. And so we're trying to figure out a way, and the governor put forward a very bold plan that in many ways kind of shook the trees. It got a lot of people to come out of their corners, and I think if people were handicapping us at the beginning of the session that our plan had any chances of success, I think they'd say it was very, very small. Now, we've been able to get something through the House. Hopefully by the end of today we'll have something through the Senate, and hopefully in the next week or two we'll get something through both bodies that will deal with this issue on the gas tax. We'll deal with some of our passenger rail and transit issues, and I think it will end up being a generational change for us because, again, this is something that happens essentially every generation, every 26 or so years, and it's our hope that we can get something through this year so the next several governors and next quite a few General Assemblies don't have to worry about transportation funding.
And, of course, I think everyone recognizes how critical a need transportation infrastructure here. As I understand it, the funds that are used for transportation now can only be used for maintenance, not new construction.
Yeah, basically, I mean, we have an overall fund called the Commonwealth Transportation Fund, and the funds are appropriated by the General Assembly, but they're actually allocated by a group called the Commonwealth Transportation Board, which is a citizen board of which I am the chairman of. Those funds are actually dedicated to 2 big mega funds. One, maintenance and operations, and the other one for capital, which we call the Transportation Trust Fund. The challenge that we've had is that our maintenance account, its largest source of money is the gas tax. 85% of the gas tax goes to maintenance. And because these problems we were just talking about with inflation and much higher CAFE standards and also alternative fuel vehicles, what's basically been happening is by state law, I have to deal with maintenance before I can use money for capital. So we are actually transferring on an annual basis up to $400 million from our highway capital account over to the maintenance account. That's going to keep on growing as the gas tax continues to decline. And so we'll end up getting up to $550 million in capital money moving over. That essentially means we're not going to have any real highway construction money. And just kind of think about this, that over the when we first started to have to move money from capital over to maintenance, we started at around 2002, 2003, $3.3 billion of highway construction dollars has had to be used for maintenance.
With a B, 3.3 billion.
And you think about all the different projects we could have done over the last 10 years with $3.3 billion. And so this is really what we're trying to get at, is the fact that if we can deal with the maintenance challenge, every dollar that we keep in maintenance is a dollar that we will have available for construction, and that's one of the big goals of the governor's proposal. And it's something that I think the General Assembly, as we've laid out the numbers, we've shown them the challenges we're faced. We've done everything that General Assembly has asked us to do. When you look at audits, you look at public-private partnerships, you see sponsorships. So you go into the rest stops and you'll see new vending, lottery tickets soon. You'll see the Geico Gecko welcoming you. We're doing everything we can to get other sources of revenue, but at the end of the day, we've done all those things. Now we have to deal with these fundamental challenges regarding funding.
Yes, and you have to have been creative over the last few years. I know back in 2011 there were the use of the state's bonding authority to borrow about $4 billion, which you were able to leverage very effectively. And you mentioned the public-private partnerships. Talk to us about that bonding authority, what it was used for, and how the public-private partnerships are doing.
Sure. Listen, on the bonding authority, it was the perfect time to do it. I mean, the state has a AAA bond rating for a reason, and now was the time to use it. We were able to go out to market. We were selling bonds for 2.5% to 3%. Wow. And on top of it, because of where the market was, we were getting projects coming in with bids at 60 to 70% of our estimates. So we had a very cheap cost of borrowing, but then also we were getting some great bargains. And so we see about 900 projects going on throughout the state right now. You see paving projects, you see bridge construction, you see capacity improvements all over the state. So we use that very, very effectively, and I think citizens are going to be already see the benefits of that. The state is, though, also looking on these mega projects. I mean, one of the big challenges that we all have, it's not just Virginia, it's a challenge throughout the country. The cost of these big projects have gotten to the point where it's difficult for any state to do it on their own. I mean, if you look at, we're doing this Midtown Tunnel project down in Hampton Roads, that's a $2.1 billion project. We have the things like the Dulles Metro Rail project, that's close to a $6 billion project. We have express lanes on the Beltway, $2.5 billion. I mean, these are projects that are becoming very, very difficult for us to do on our own. Bringing in private capital, getting them to actually design, engineer, build, and finance is actually becoming critical for not just for Virginia, but throughout the world. Virginia has been a leader. What we've done is we fine-tuned the process of doing our public-private partnerships. We're now, in fact, last year, if we were a nation, there's only one other country that had more private investment in transportation. That was the United Kingdom. And that was they just beat us by a little bit. If
the Commonwealth were a nation.
Yes. So we're attracting billions of dollars, and that's the thing. What you have to look at transportation is that it is about trying to bring investment in, and we are attracting billions of dollars each year. People don't think of it that way, but it really is. When you look at the size of these projects and who's putting money in, and the fact that these people are becoming long-term partners for us and helping us move transportation projects forward.
And of course, the Port Authority is a big part of that,
Yes.
and I understand that commerce will increase because by the year 2015, I believe the Panama Canal will have been completed in terms of widening, so you're going to get these huge container ships that are going to come into the Port of Virginia. Talk about how important that is.
Yeah, obviously, one of the big issues for us when we came into office was the governor, gave us a challenge, each secretary, about given where the economy was, how do we use our resources to help make Virginia more competitive. Transportation is a big part of that overall, but I'll tell you, I have two general economic engines, if you kind of think of it. One is up in Northern Virginia, the airports, and our involvement with the airports up there. Dulles particularly is an international gateway for us for people as well as air cargo. And so we're focusing quite a bit of efforts up there in getting things like the Silver Line built,
Yes.
but also looking at ways to get road and a better road network in and around the airports to open up opportunities for cargo operations. The seaport is our gateway for freight internationally. And we have the Virginia Port Authority, which is essentially controls 4 different terminals down there, as well as now the Port of Richmond, which it was an initiative of this administration to take that over from the city to help improve its competitiveness. But also then we have an inland port, which is an intermodal facility. But we're facing some challenges because our biggest competitor in the north is New York, and there's more people living in the city of New York than there are in the entire state of Commonwealth of Virginia. Then you look at what's happening down southeast. We have two incredible population and economic growth down there. So we put a lot of effort into improving the competitiveness of our port. We're doing things like we were able to work with and take over this APM facility down there. We've also invested a lot of money in the transportation infrastructure, including this new 460 project, which will allow us to move trucks out of the port on what will be a 55-mile, 4-lane divided interstate grade road. We've done things like tax credits and grants and set up actually an economic development zone around the port to hopefully get us to get more cargo, but also get manufacturing, distribution centers, and whichever. And so our goal has been to really focus on the port. Now, one of the things that's happened is we've actually had a privatization proposal.
Right.
And it's not to sell the port. People, it's funny when people are out there using their sound bites to, we never sell the port. The issue is that who would actually operate the 4 state terminals? I mean, when you go down that port, actually, the vast majority of economic activity you see down there is actually privately held. The state has 4 different terminals. The issue is we have essentially a state subsidiary that operates them for us. We have the Virginia Port Authority owns them. We have this thing called the Virginia International Terminal, which actually operates them. The question is that whether we could get better operation, better performance, and also free up more money for us to reinvest in other parts of the port by having a private operator come in and lease it from us, which is about 85% of the terminals in the world actually have a public entity owns them, but has a private entity actually leases them. And that's what the proposal is.
I take it it's important for us to become more competitive because even though we have one of the deepest ports, of course, other states are dredging, so at some point we won't have that advantage any longer.
Well, that's exactly right. Up in New York, actually, it's not water depth, it's actually it's air height. The Bayonne Bridge, which runs between Staten Island and Bayonne, actually won't allow the bigger ships to get underneath it. The Port Authority up there is actually going to spend a couple $2 billion to lift the bridge. And so, but places like New York, again, they have an inherent advantage over us because of the size of the population. And they've become really the gateway to the northeast. Again, we were looking at Charleston, Savannah. They have the gateway to the southeast. We're sort of in the middle, and so we have to find ways to become more competitive, cheaper, better road and rail links, which is, again, the state has put a lot of money into rail networks into the port. So we can end up offering types of services at a lower price to be competitive with those two engines in north and south of us. But also what we want is not just simply the cargo to be dropped there. We want the manufacturing and the distribution centers and all the services that go along with that. And that's one of the big things we're really focusing on is how do we get these mega sites for things like for advanced and very large manufacturing. And that's one of the things that we've been sort of missing in our equation down there in Hampton Roads is we've never had mega sites. With the new 460 running right through 3 mega sites, and when I'm saying mega sites, 1,800 acre potential business parks. We have 2 or 3 of them down there in that region, on our road and our rail, and within driving distance of the port. And that's what we're trying to get, because we're very concerned. I'm just going to say is that not only is the general economic conditions, but we're very concerned about what's happened in Washington, sequestration, particularly Hampton Roads. A lot of military spending. I mean, it's already happening. We're seeing changes in deployment. I was down there yesterday. First time. I'm a former Coast Guard naval officer as well, and first time in my life I've ever seen 5 aircraft carriers actually at the dock at Norfolk.
At one time. At
one time. You never see that, and it says a lot about what's starting to happen. They're actually keeping ships from deploying to save costs, and you know, when you go down there, there's 35 or so thousand people working in the shipyards. We've got to find ways to maximize the economic engines that we have, and that's what we're trying to do.
And of course, you have a lot of federal employees up in Northern Virginia. You've got military installations up there as well. Yes. So the impact could be very serious. Very,
very serious. In fact, you know, people in the administration, our Secretary of Commerce and Trade, Virginia Economic Development Partnership, are all looking at this, working with localities and regional groups. And again, you got 2 separate types of, I'm going to say, federal presence in the 2 areas. In many ways, the Hampton Roads, we can look at the fact that a lot of it is support for actual military units, and Northern Virginia, a lot of white-collar jobs, a lot of IT jobs. In some ways, those folks up there, what we're trying to do in Northern Virginia is invest in the infrastructure now, so that when those jobs convert over to private applications, that they want to stay in Northern Virginia. Even if they're not doing, you know, IT work for the federal government, we would hope that they'd be able to still be competitive and attract, you know, more private activities and going out there and serving the private sector.
You mentioned an inland port. I believe that's the one in Warren County at Front Royal. What's the function of that?
Well, it's an interesting concept, and I give great credit to the folks about 25 years ago who moved forward on this. What essentially it did was establish an intermodal facility up in Warren County near where 66 and 81 come together. And so a trucker coming off of 81 can come right there to that facility, drop off their container. It's as if they dropped it off at the dock down in Norfolk. We put it on a train, we take it down to Norfolk, gets on a ship, and vice versa. Now, what's interesting about it is we did that to capture cargo that we would potentially not already capture, as well as to take trucks off the road. But it's been a great economic engine for that area. If you're driving along at 66, it's a very rural. All of a sudden, you come up and you see this interchange with all these different, you know, stores and businesses. That inland port attracted almost now 7,000 jobs.
7,000.
Right in that immediate vicinity, between logistics centers and chemical manufacturing and whichever, all because they wanted to be near that intermodal facility. So it's been a win-win-win for us. And that's what we're trying to do here in the city of Portsmouth, the city of Richmond. Instead of a train service, we're running a barge that runs from the couple days a week from Richmond down to Norfolk. And what we're doing is we've taken already 8,000 trucks off the road each year by running this service, and it's providing jobs here. It takes trucks off of 64, And we've already, hopefully very, very soon, we're about to announce a pretty big development. Somebody's going to invest a lot of money to increase the amount of containers going through there, because again, they see the opportunities, and we're going to see more jobs. And that's sort of what we're trying to do here in Richmond. Is instead of with essentially rail, we're trying to do that here in Richmond with a barge.
Commercial Flight Space Authority, Wallops Island.
Yeah.
I know there's something exciting about to happen there, potentially tomorrow.
Yes, you know what's interesting is not only am I now responsible for horizontal transportation, they've given me vertical as well. And you know, the Space Flight Authority is a hidden gem for Virginia. But people don't realize this. At Wallops Island, which is a NASA facility, we have a couple launch pads there, the state agency. It actually has had more rocket launches from Wallops than they have out of Florida.
Really?
But the thing is, most of them are smaller rockets. We have been doing it for I think almost 10 to 15 years, but smaller solid fuel rockets. We were able to work with a Virginia-based company, Orbital, which is out of Dulles. They won the contract to be resupplying the space station, and they're the competitor to this company that got a lot of attention last year, SpaceX, which actually launched the first commercial resupply mission to the space station out of Cape Canaveral. We are now their competitor, and Orbital has the contract to provide the other half of those resupply missions. We've built a liquid fuel facility out there in Wallops to serve them. Today, in fact, if everything works well, they'll be doing a hot fire test on the engines. And if everything works out with that, within 2 months we'll have essentially dry run launch out of Wallops up to the space station, and then by the end of the year, regular resupply missions to the space station will be fired out of Wallops. So this is good because it's a Virginia-based company which has a very large presence in Loudoun County. We're providing that support to them. It's going to be good for NASA because it's going to help Wallops Island develop even more. And then instead of people trucking all the way down to Florida to watch a launch, so they can go out to the Eastern Shore and spend a little time and hopefully spend some money in Virginia too.
Absolutely, absolutely. The Department of Motor Vehicles.
Yes.
Another very large agency that you supervise. Tell us how the department is doing. What are the kinds of services does it provide throughout the Commonwealth?
Listen, the Department of Motor Vehicles is an incredible agency for us. People, I don't think necessarily recognize that the current commissioner, Rick Holcomb, and his staff, they've done a lot of things to make it easier for people to do things online, to try to get them from having to come into the DMVs and reissue and renew licenses. They've been very entrepreneurial in how they've been approaching this and how they provide the services. There's a DMV pretty much in every community throughout the Commonwealth, and I'm told constantly particularly from the business community who do work in different states, that actually the Virginia DMV is probably the most advanced and customer friendly of any they've ever dealt with. And it's interesting, people see the DMV for the services they deal with. People don't realize those way stations along the interstates, they're run by DMV. And also DMV has a law enforcement side. They're actually also our tax collectors for the Commonwealth Transportation Fund. So they do a lot of different things for the community, and they are finding newer and better ways to make it easier for people to meet their various credentialing requirements. I
think people were very happy when the McDonnell administration reopened the rest stops when he first came into office.
Yes. Well, I tell you, and this is one of the things, we came in the office, we did some audits of VDOT, and we were a little shocked to find that the day they closed the rest stops, supposedly for not having any money to keep them operating, they were sitting on $700 million in cash in the account that actually paid for it. But it showed you some of the challenges that VDOT and the way they were doing accounting and how they was, actually procuring services and programming money. The current commissioner, Greg Worley, has done a great job with his staff in trying to clean all up that, and we've gotten our balances way down, and people are actually, when you pay your gas tax or some of the other monies, it's going towards the services you expect from the Commonwealth.
I know you observed a phenomenon which still exists when you were commuting from Prince William up to D.C. when you were working there, the slugs.
Yes.
That private cultural phenomena that grew up as a result of people wanting rides into D.C. Now, how will the hot lanes, if any, affect that traffic, so to speak?
Sure. I mean, basically, the express lanes that have already opened up on the, we're now calling them express lanes, but they are the high occupancy toll lanes. Whether the ones that just open up on the Beltway or the ones that will be opening up that we rechristened the current HOV to hot lanes, express lanes, next year, if you're HOV 3, you can ride on them for free. The only thing we require people to do is have one of the new transponders, which actually have the ability to click, essentially HOV, non-HOV on them.
Those are the Easy Pass devices.
Yes. Yeah. So we have your traditional Easy Pass, which is just essentially it's always quote unquote picking up that you're paying the toll. But if you're gonna the carpool, you have to get one of the new Easy Pass devices that actually you can switch on and off.
I see. And
for everyone, they're gonna. I mean, what they're gonna find is a smoother ride for them because the lanes we're converting over. That will actually actually widening the current 2 lanes to 3 lanes, and then we're expanding the HOV lanes initially down to Aquia, Stafford, Garrisonville. And then once that's up and operating, the next step is go down to Fredericksburg with the HOV, and we think that's going to end up getting even more commuting opportunities. And we love our sluggers. I mean, we think it's great that people will get into perfect strangers' cars.
Right.
But it's an incredible system that works, and it saves a lot of money and a lot of time, and helps the environment.
Now, you were previously chair of the Prince William County Board of Supervisors. How has your service there helped you as Secretary of Transportation?
Yeah, well, I got hit in the head a couple times. So, it's local government especially local government like in Prince William, which is growing rapidly, is a great training ground for jobs like this. I hate to say this, that after 7 years of being on the chairman of the Prince William Board, there's pretty much nothing I haven't seen. And I got to tell you, I just keep my temper. You just got to, you go with the flow. You recognize that people obviously have very diverse interests and backgrounds, and it keeps you very goal focused. I mean, it's interesting when you're in local government. You leave your board members and board meetings, and things are happening because of that. And that's what transportation is.
Great. Well, thank you for taking the time to be with us, Secretary of Transportation Sean Connaughton. Good luck with the governor's proposal on transportation funding.
Thank you, Woody. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for watching this special edition of Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans. Mm-hmm.